I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of people trying to convince me that Miles Morales is a Spider-Man for a whole new generation. He's not even a Spider-Man of any generation. He's just Miles Morales. There's an article talk about it because there was success with the video game. Here to talk about this is my good friend Doc. How you doing, buddy?
I'm wonderful, sir. It's like we're being entirely gaslit by an entire media apparatus and PR department into believing something that even the company itself doesn't market that way. So.
Absolutely not. It's crazy, and it's because he's the one character, the one recent legacy character, not one character, but recent legacy character. Marvel tried to push it really hard. He's the one that's kind of worked. Well, yeah, he's the new Spider-Man, even though he doesn't sell anything compared to Spider-Man. When it comes to comic books, he doesn't sell anything compared, and when it comes to like movie tickets compared to Peter Parker Spider-Man, even in video games, he's a second fiddle. That's Peter Parker. That's just kind of the way it is. And, you know, I feel bad about it because I do like aspects of Miles Morales. I don't like the current writer or anything like that. And I think there's a lot of potential there, but he's just always in the shadow.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Miles is the test case for them trying every single way, the comic industry, the comic media, trying to convince us that a replacement character has overtaken an original. And if they can figure out how they could do it, how to do it with Miles, they might be able to replicate the formula on one of the other dozen or two replacement characters out there that are currently being published that is not gotten over, but is just the not white guy version of an existing character. That seems to be the intention, and Miles has the best potential for getting that result. Problem is, it's still not there, and they can't push it over the finish line. I mean, the other ones haven't even like gotten out. They've all stumbled right off the starting line. Miles is about third of the way through the race, but he's still nowhere fucking close. This whole industry and the media apparatus around it feels like they're just trying to convince us that they already won, maybe so that we quit.
That ain't happening. This is what the Popverse had to say. When someone asks you to think of Spider-Man, who do you picture behind the mask? Do you think of Peter Parker, the shy bookworm from Queens, or Miles Morales, the creative whiz kid from Brooklyn? There is no wrong answer, as both characters are Spider-Man. Thanks to movies like Across the Spider-Verse and Insomniac Spider-Man video games, a new generation of fans are growing up with Miles Morales as their Spider-Man. And I reject the premise outright, because if you watch Across the Spider-Verse, he's one of 100 Spider-Man in that goddamn movie, including Peter Parker as Spider-Man. And in the video game, he's a sidekick for the most part to the real Spider-Man in most cases. And they really haven't got him over. The way that DC did it, because DC has gotten legacy characters over into the mantle to replace long-standing Golden Age characters and stuff like that, specifically with Hal Jordan overtaking an Alan Scott, or even a Kyle Rayner overtaking Hal Jordan. It's because you kill the character off and you don't bring him back for a long, long time. They did the same thing with Wally West replacing Barry Allen as the Flash. Wally West was the Flash for a couple of generations of comic book readers. But it's because the other character was never there. They've never had the balls to actually get rid of Peter Parker Spider-Man, and they never will.
No, they won't. Peter Parker Spider-Man is the #1 merch seller. And so DC had to literally take all those other characters completely off the board. They are not going to take Peter completely off the stage in a way that matters for a decade, 2 decades, not when you have the same kind of merch. You know, they've tried to make Miles look unique visually, so to separate him from Peter Parker as Spider-Man. The double-edged sword is you can't immediately slap him into the exact same role and still sell the same type of merch.
You know, they talk about Across the Spider-Verse, and the first one is certainly a Miles Morales movie. If you go watch the second one, that's a fucking Gwen Stacy Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider movie.
The entire movie is about her.
Yeah. So, is she the next generation Spider-Man? Might as well be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, I think other than the fact, that movie, while it was okay, I finally finished watching it the other day on an airplane coming back from Chicago.
It's not a full movie, Doc. I did not like the cliffhanger. That's not an ending.
No, it's not. That is dumb, and I hated it. He was basically a passenger in his own damn movie. He had almost no development whatsoever in it, other than the fact that he got into a fight with his mom and dad. That's it. He had no development. There was nothing unique about Miles in that movie. And hell, even the plot points of it, he's an aberration. That's the point. He's an aberration. He's an aberration also in the legacy character department at Marvel, because he's the only one that's even marginally got over.
This is what they had to say about the character. For a whole new generation, Miles is their Spider-Man. Peter Parker, voice actor Yuri Lowenthal, said. Pete is now the old guy cracking jokes that nobody thinks is funny. To a certain age of Spider-Man, when you say point to your Spider-Man, they point to Miles. It's amazing that the characters can be as flexible and still change with the times. We live in a time of great spider magnitude right now. But I don't really see that, because even when you look at like the kids stuff, Miles Morales is just Miles Morales, or he's got another name. He's never Spider-Man, even in like the kids programming stuff like that. Even Marvel don't treat him as Spider-Man. His title is Miles Morales Spider-Man, rather than Amazing Spider-Man or Spectacular Spider-Man or a Web of Spider-Man, anything like that. If it has Spider-Man only in the title, you know that it's a Peter Parker book. If it's going to be starring Miles Morales, it's going to say Miles Morales in the title. No one treats him like he's actually Spider-Man, and I don't think even the kids do. When you look at a lot of the shirts and the merch that's out there, most of it is red and blue.
You know, I walked into a Target the other day to go and buy my nephew a birthday present for his 4th birthday. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll get him something Spider-Man related. You know, he's 4. Every kid loves Spider-Man. They had the kids, like the thick plastic masks, not like the chintzy, flexy ones like they used to have when we were kids. But they had the kids' masks. They had a bunch of Miles sitting there untouched. They had 2 Spider-Man 2099s, and under the peg for the actual Spider-Man masks, those were empty, because those actually sold out. You know, there's not this same demand. I understand maybe for a couple of people, if you ask who their Spider-Man is, you're going to have a few outliers that'll point to Miles Morales. For only one time can I think of where Marvel didn't put some other signifier on it, on a Miles Morales product, that just called him Spider-Man. And that was from about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, the Miles Morales relaunch. They did just give him the just Spider-Man title. So that's the only time I can think of it. But you look at their toys, you look at their the merch, it says Miles Morales. It says Miles Morales, the Ultimate Spider-Man. Sometimes it just doesn't even have Spider-Man on the label. He just looks like a spider person.
There's nothing wrong with getting a character like Miles over, and he's not as popular, or he's not going to be the definitive Spider-Man like a Peter Parker. There's nothing wrong with that. Peter Parker Spider-Man is the definitive defining hero of all of Marvel Comics, rivaling only Batman in the entire comic book industry. This is a character with an enormous legacy, probably the greatest legacy of Marvel Comics, and perhaps, you know, even in pop culture and stuff. You know, he's been very successful on the big screen. You know, just getting him over as a version of Spider-Man is probably credit on everyone's part.
Just because some fucking voice actor is going to try to tell us that happens to be working on a video game, not just not an actual like spokesperson, a random voice actor that's trying to essentially make a career for themselves, is the one trying to convince us of this. It just doesn't work, and it doesn't go over. There's not the level of acceptance. Anyone that tries to argue with you otherwise either has an ulterior motive or is just plain wrong.
Or they got the best caps in the world. You know what I'm saying, dude?
Oh, yeah.
You got that good devil's lettuce that nobody else can get their hands on.
Exactly. Exactly. You got to be fucking little blazed to believe that.
The final point they make in this article, Doc, it's interesting to note that Spider-Man 2, the video game, ends with Peter retiring, making Miles Morales New York's only Spider-Man. The journey Miles has taken on and off the page has been extraordinary. Like Peter Parker, he's turned into a pop culture phenomenon. Speaking personally, I can back up Yuri's claim. Last Halloween, I saw dozens of kids dressed up as Spider-Man, and most of them were wearing Miles Morales costumes. This isn't to suggest that Miles will ever replace Peter Parker. Both characters are irreplaceable, and like Lowenthal said, we're living in a great time of Spider-Man magnitude.
Yeah. If he saw a bunch of kids wearing Miles Morales costumes, it's probably because they were already sold out of the the Peter Parker costumes, because that's the way it works. Those ones move off the shelf first. I mean, there's a bunch of people out there that have a vested interest in Spider-Man being replaced by Miles Morales and by the culture accepting it. They've been trying to will this character across the finish line into the full-on replacement of the real character, because it's never worked at Marvel. They've been trying to will this themselves, even if they got to pick the character up on their back and carry them across the finish line, because it's never been done at Marvel. It's never been successful at Marvel. It never will be successful at Marvel, but they're going to keep trying, keep pushing. And that's not to say Miles is a bad character. He's not. And in fact, actually, if he was a unique character that had his own friggin' name, I can almost guarantee he'd be more financially and culturally accepted as that character than he is as other Spider-Man. The second version of a character, the cheap dollar store knockoff version of it, is never going to be as popular as the original, no matter how much they try.
Now, you said people have a vested interest. So, in the past, we know that a lot of people don't like Batman because he's a billionaire, he's rich, he's white, kind of a playboy. And in their minds, fighting crime means that he's just beating up helpless minorities, like in the street and stuff like that. And they don't quite like that. He's fascist. We don't like him. They don't like Superman because he is the symbol of truth, justice in the American way. You're not supposed to like America anymore. And I have heard people like John Ridley say he's like the apex, like white man or whatever. So you can't really like him. When you talk about Peter Parker, he's just some schlub in New York. He's not rich. He's not particularly powerful like a Superman. People don't even know what his face looks like. He's basically hiding in the shadows. Perhaps they just don't like any of these characters like that.
I feel like there's even more to the hatred of Batman, and there's a lot more to the hatred of Superman by a lot of these actors out there in the comic book industry. Some of it being values-based, some of it being nationality-based, and some of it being race-based. The goal here with Peter Parker, because he is just some random schlub in New York, we can much more easily replace him. No one will really care because nobody cares who's under the mask. They've taken
That's where they're wrong, though, Doc.
I understand.
People are attached to the characters. They're attached to the origin. They're attached to the people around them, the side characters and all that stuff, and their interactions with them, and they kind of grow with the character. I mean, you started reading Spider-Man when you were what, like 12?
8.
8 years old. Now you're in your early 40s. So we're talking 35 years or thereabouts. You've been reading Spider-Man, and you've been growing over time. When you're 8, you probably like hockey a little bit. You're in Pee Wee leagues, and you might not even like girls yet. And now you're a fully grown man. You own your own house. And you've basically been doing all this with him the whole way.
Exactly. I mean, you have basically everyone in my generation, as well as a few years younger than me, that was, and forever will be our Spider-Man. I mean, maybe when we're all dead, that's when they can finally get over the replacement Spider-Man. Not
the way that they're doing it now. You have to kill Peter off.
You have to kill
Peter off. He's always the number one Spider-Man, no matter what.
He always was, and he always will be. And you have to take him off the table for it to work. The only way for them to make it work with the way it is right now, if you would have had him running around as basically Peter's sidekick this whole time without trying to steal his name, or for both in the marketing material and in story, where they try to have characters validate Miles for, yes, you have earned the right to be called Spider-Man. If they wouldn't have kept that shit up for the last 10 years, and they would have just tried to get the character over as a sidekick, then maybe at some point we would have accepted it. But right now, they can't change course into that process midstream. They want to be able to have a ready-made replacement that they can just slap in. They don't want to take the Peter off the board because they know financially they can't. What they're doing right now isn't going to work, and it hasn't worked to this point. It has 0% chance of working in the long term. You're not going to force us to accept this character as just the same as Peter, or just as good or better, or even have the same name as him. We're going to still call him Miles Morales. He will forever be Miles Morales, and he will never, ever, ever be Spider-Man.
Basically, Doc is spitting truth right there, and a lot of people out there are probably like, man, I fucking like this Doc guy. He's a straight shooter. He's the real deal. Well, it just so happens, if you go over to the Patreon, there's a link in the video description, you can get more Doc. We've got an entire tier dedicated to him called the Doc is Right tier, where we've got some old unfiltered videos that go up here on YouTube, but you get all the recording there, as well as a 2-hour Q&A every single week, and we have lots of fun there, Doc.
It's a great opportunity to hear more, especially the things that YouTube won't allow us to say, because it might hurt their delicate little feelings. So come on over to the Patreon.